Now on the APEC VIP hotline, cutting-edge training for the serious athlete, apecgo.com from texags.com. It's Olin Buchanan. How you doing, Olin?
I'm great, thank you. How are you?
Doing very well. Thanks very much for being on with us today. Let's talk about the A&M win over Arkansas. What did we learn from this ball game about the Aggies?
Well, I guess we learned, first of all, that now they can protect the lead in the second half, which was a problem, obviously last year, especially with, particularly against Arkansas. And, we see that, they can play pretty good defense. They gave up some passing yards, but you expect to do that with Tyler Wilson and Colby Hamilton on the other side. But, again, only one touchdown. And then, of course, Johnny Manziel just keeps getting better. And I know, his quarterback play is a big reason that there's a lot of optimism down here.
It is an incredible thing what he's been able to do as a true freshman, to be able to come in and play like he's played already.
Well, actually, he's a redshirt freshman, but still, that is, he's been amazing. And, coming into the season, the big question about A&M, as much as anything, was the quarterback play. They're saying, almost everybody's back in the offensive line. You got good receivers. You got good running backs. But, hey, you've lost a quarterback that was a first-round draft choice. So, how are you going to do there? Well, Johnny Manziel stepped in. And, I'm not going to say he's making people forget about Ryan Tannehill, because they'll never forget him. But, he's come in and he's played so well. He's been spectacular. And every week, he just seems to get better. And if he continues to improve, then, I think A&M will be a very tough team to beat.
And the job Kevin Sumlin's done so far in these first four ball games, we're realizing that the schedule's been kind to him, other than the Florida game. But a lot of things have changed at Aggie Land.
It really has, and maybe we're just starting to see his team really get comfortable in his new offensive scheme. I think it's probably asking too much to think that they're going to, take over, do into a new offense, a new system, and be really good at it right away. And we understand that Arkansas defense is weak, as was SMU's, but they blew out SMU, and SMU came back and played a pretty good game against TCU. So and when they lost by 3 points to Florida, I think a lot of people thought, okay, shrug their shoulders, but now Florida's a top 10 team. So, the level of competition has to get better, and it's obviously going to get better with Alabama and LSU and teams like that coming up on the schedule. But, maybe it looks a little bit better than it would at first glance, because Florida's playing so well. And, again, SMU played so well against TCU. But, they played the teams that, they've had to play. And I guess if you're playing a team that is inferior, that you should blow them out, and they definitely have done that 3 games in a row.
Very impressively so, too. Particularly when you think about some of the issues they had last year with turnovers and penalties, those things aren't happening with this team now.
No, Manziel hasn't thrown an interception yet. They're not losing fumbles. They're creating some. Actually, up until the Arkansas game, the biggest, issue on offense, the biggest question was, the running backs weren't making a lot of yards, and the offensive line seemed like it was having some trouble run blocking. But, when you take a step back and you see Johnny Manziel rushing for 104 yards against Arkansas, and then you start saying, well, does it really matter where those rushing yards are coming from? And then, Ben Molina's been playing pretty well. He's not knocking out 100-yard games, but he's, running around 60, very respectable. So I think they felt like they did really that they made some strides in the running game and in the offensive line and run blocking last week. And they're just going to have to keep getting better against Ole Miss and then against Louisiana Tech. And then I think the real test is going to come in 3 weeks when they play LSU. Then we'll see how well that offensive line is playing and how well they're adapting to playing in that new system.
And you go on the road a lot in the next 5 weeks or so.
Yes, sir. It's going to be 4 road games in 5 weeks, and the only home games against LSU. So
Wow.
we're going to find out a lot about, just how tough these guys are. But, again, the first two games, Ole Miss and Louisiana Tech, those are games that you feel like A&M should win. You never take anything for granted, but I know, like, for the guys in Vegas will install A&M as favorites. And then, you got that home game against LSU, and then you're at Auburn, which has struggled some this year, and then at Mississippi State, and I think there's still some questions about them. So even though it's going to be a really tough stretch of 5 games, I think at least the 4 road games are all very winnable, and maybe even LSU when you consider the way the Tigers have played the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, they've not played well, and they may be a little overrated early. The early season ranking may have been a little bit too high for them, it looks like, at this point. Looking at the Aggies now, talk a little bit about that defense. Their defense, again, last year, we saw a lot of leads get away. For a number of different reasons. It looks like that's been fixed as well, and that's usually something that always seems to be a problem with a team that runs that wide-open, high-scoring spread offense, is that a lot of times your defense gives up a lot of points, a la Baylor, West Virginia. That's not happening with the Aggies.
No, it's really not. The most points they've allowed is 20 against Florida. And there's no shame there. And then plus that was their first game and Florida's second game, so there's a little bit of Florida had a little bit of an advantage there. But, coming in, I know they felt like they had a good defense, a good first-team defense, but there were some questions and some concerns about their depth. And I think that's still there. As long as they stay healthy, I think they feel like they're going to have a pretty good defensive team. DeMontre Moore as a defensive end, he's playing really well. He's among the nation's leaders in sacks. Spencer Neely, they moved him from defensive end to defensive tackle. So he goes from being kind of a slow defensive end to an undersized but quick defensive tackle. He's playing really well there. And they were getting some really good play from a freshman, Julian Obiaha, at the defensive end opposite DeMontre Moore. They felt good about their linebackers. They just needed to keep them healthy. And so far, Sean Porter, Stephen Jenkins, and Jonathan Stewart, they've all been healthy, and they're playing pretty well. And then, there were some questions about the secondary. They're starting a true freshman at cornerback, Devontae Harris, and he's had some issues. He's been called out for ankle biting on some tackles, but he also has played pretty well in coverage. The Arkansas's first play, they throw a deep ball to Kobe Hamilton that looks like he's open for a touchdown, and at the last minute, Harris was able to close and reach in and knock the ball away. So he's made some plays, and they're really excited about the play of Tony Hurd, who's moved into the starting lineup at safety. And then also they've got Shazer Everett, a sophomore, who's been playing really well. They're moving him back and forth between cornerback and safety, depending on the competition, just because he's big and physical, and they really like what he can bring to the table. If they're playing against really big and physical receivers, they feel like they can put him at corner and match up really well. And if not, then they think that they can move him to safety and not lose anything in performance. So right now they feel really good about their defense, but again, they need to stay healthy because there's not a lot of depth.
Finally, just gut feel, how good do you think this team is right now?
At the beginning of the year, I predicted 8 wins.
Okay.
For Texas A&M, and I still feel like that's a pretty it's a pretty realistic goal. And I think if they got 8 wins, it would be a very good season. I still think that as of today, October 1st, you would still probably anticipate LSU and Alabama being favored and probably beating A&M. But I think every other game on the schedule is very winnable. That doesn't mean you're going to win every one, but I think they're pretty good. I think as long as they stay healthy and as Manziel continues to improve, that they have a real good chance to now, maybe exceed my expectations and win 9, and with a bowl game even 10 if it works out that well. But again, they're going to have to stay healthy, especially on defense. I can't stress that enough that there is some depth issues there, and again, as good as Manziel has played, like you mentioned earlier, the last 3 weeks have been questionable competition. So he's going to have to continue to improve and then show that he can do it against better teams.
Well, Olin, we really do appreciate you coming on with us today. We want to remind everybody to check out TexAgs.com. You also have TexAgs Radio. Are you a radio guy too?
Well, maybe not, but what's the line? I play one on TV. I kind of pretend to be on occasion.
I'm sure it sounds great.
I got a good face for radio, I'll say that.
Yeah, well, same here, buddy. Hey, thanks very much for coming on with us. Be sure and check out Olin Buchanan's work on TexAgs.com. Olin, thanks very much. We'll talk to you down the line.
All right, thank you.
All right, Olin Buchanan from TexAgs.com on Bryan Houston Sports Radio Live on 99.3 Talk FM.